following podcast contains spoilers and words like and gosh. Mate, did we watch a thing this week?
Yeah, we did.
Hello everybody and welcome back to We Watched a Thing. It's B Dizzle, and again this week I don't have Topher with me. Instead I have someone who's even better. I'm so lucky to be joined by a great friend of the show, one of our first podcasting buddies really, Julio from the Contrarians podcast. How are you doing, mate?
Hey, how's it going? How appropriate that we're doing a movie called Little Children while Topher is busy with a small child of his own.
Yes. I'm really happy to be doing this movie with you. It's great because the problem with doing the throwbacks with Topher is because we've been friends for so long, every movie that we genuinely really love, the other one has usually seen already, probably on our recommendation, which is why I feel like I've gotten a rotten run on the show, because I get the bad look of throwing out things like Sphere and Tommy Boy, but you know, when you and I were talking about doing an episode and we decided to do a throwback and I was able to send you my list of 100 favorite movies and this was very high up there, I was so glad that you hadn't seen it, because finally I get to show people I do like good movies, or I hope that's what I'm going to show. I don't know what you thought of it yet.
Yeah, I was happy that we could do something that was on your list and that would also basically take care of a major blind spot on my own list. This is you know, Kate Winslet alone is enough to make me want to watch any movie.
Yeah, so you said that you actually owned it on DVD. That's pretty common for you, isn't it, to have DVDs that you haven't even opened or watched?
Mm-hmm. I have some that are still in the wrapper. It's just I don't do it anymore. Now if I buy something, it's something that I know that I'm going to watch right away, or I know that there's a scheduled time for me to watch it, but or it's a Criterion that, you know, because it's a sale. But for the most part, I stepped away from the whole like I'm just gonna buy it because it's cheap and, you know, I'll buy it at some point. It's become a lot easier because now you can find stuff streaming most of the time. But back in the day, there was a lot of like, oh, well, you're just like, I don't know, it's 2 a.m. and you're at Walmart, you know, buying junk food, and you walk past that $5 bin or that $3 bin, and there's a lot of movies that you've heard about or that you wanted to watch, and they're like super discounted. And it's like, why not? And then you end up, you know, carrying like 10 DVDs to your car. And, you know, all this talk, and at the end, I ended up not watching the DVD because it was on HBO Max, and I just watched it there.
So, yeah, I've loved this movie since I first saw it back in 2006 when it came out. I was working in a cinema at the time, which I'm sure you understand and appreciate. When you're working in a cinema, you just kind of watch anything. Mm-hmm. And the cinema had just opened. They bought out this little art house cinema in my town, and they built this larger one. And at the time, they were really trying to like cater to everyone, which was a weird thing because they'd be showing these huge blockbusters and then these little indie films like this. And I remember I was working, you know, ushering one day, and I walked in to a cinema and the trailer for this was playing. And I think I've told this story on the show before, but this guy sitting down the front, when the trailer ended, just yelled out, "Art house." I just thought it was hilarious. Topher and I occasionally say that to each other. But yeah, I think this movie is so exceptional. So I'm really happy to be able to talk about this with you.
Yeah, I don't think I was aware of it until it got the nomination for Jackie Earle Haley. And by then it wasn't in theaters anymore, I think. If it got a re-release, I didn't catch it. And so it's just been kind of one of those movies that were just there. And then I bought it, you know, based on that. I'm pretty sure I didn't even know Kate Winslet was in it when I bought it. And it's just like after the fact. I also didn't know that Tom Perrotta was the writer. Yep. I'm a huge Leftover fan. And that, you know, I've been meaning to read The Leftovers. And now I have to add also Little Children to the list of books by Tom Perrotta that I need to read. Yeah. But yeah, there's so many things. And Todd Field, I love in the bedroom. So I thought, until I was looking up his IMDb, that's when I realized that I kept getting Todd Field and Todd Haynes confused. So I was like, oh, I watch a whole bunch of movies by this guy. And then I was like, oh no, Todd Field only did In the Bedroom and then this one. As far as Todd Field, he's, you know, I don't know if you've seen In the Bedroom, but that was fantastic movie. It was the first movie I watched in movie theaters when I first moved to the United States.
Right.
It was great. The second movie, and I was just talking about this with a friend a few days ago. The second movie was Queen of the Damned, so it was quite a contrast. But in the bedroom, I was blown away. I didn't know what I was walking into. Kind of like this movie. I went in not knowing anything. I hadn't seen the trailer or anything. And I was like, all right, well, I wonder what this guy will do next. And I guess what he did next was Little Children several years later. All I knew was that Jackie Earle Haley had gotten a Best Supporting Actor nomination for playing a pedophile, or at least that's what I thought it was about. But it's not really about that.
No, it's not. No. So Little Children is a 2006 American drama film directed by Todd Field, as you said, based on the 2004 novel of the same name by Tom Perrotta, who co-wrote the screenplay with Field. It stars Kate Winslet, Patrick Wilson, Jennifer Connelly, Jackie Earle Haley, Noah Emmerich, Gregg Edelman, Phyllis Somerville, and Will Lyman. And I'm going to make you do this, Julio. What is it about?
Well, I've been thinking about that for a while, Billy. Basically, since the movie ended. It's that old chestnut of I guess suburban hell, kind of like American Beauty. The whole like these people, they're so beautiful and they live in these beautiful houses, and they're so white, but underneath the pain. The dissatisfaction with their lives. I don't know what you call the genre, but it's just basically, you grew up to be an adult, you got married, you had kids, now you hate it. Kate Winslet has a little girl, Patrick Wilson has a little boy. They're both on the surface happily married. They start an affair because that's how they fulfill their needs. Basically, the movie builds up to a point where they need to decide if this is just basically something that can go long term, or if they need to be realistic and just end it. And in the background, there's the Jackie Earle Haley subplot, where basically this perfect community suddenly has this really ugly detail that has moved back into their neighborhood. Most of the movie, I was wondering when and how these two storylines would come together. And it almost looked like they weren't going to. I was gonna knock some points off my final score if it ended up not being something that really came together at the end, but it did. And I mean, we can talk about how they do it and what it means in the long term. But I guess ultimately, what is the plot of this movie? It's about two adults struggling to find satisfaction in their life. Because they're not happy, even though they have, in theory, the perfect families. Yeah,
I think to me, what ties all these storylines together, and the book is very similar. The book focuses even more on some of those secondary characters. I would say that really there are like the 7 main characters that kind of intersect, and not even necessarily intersect that heavily, as you kind of alluded to. But for me, I think Tom Perrotta is such a great writer, and I know you're a big fan of The Leftovers. Have you seen or read Election?
Is that Tom Perrotta as well?
That's Tom Perrotta as well, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so now I have 3 books by Tom Perrotta that I need to read. I really like Election.
Election, I think, is one of the best comedies of the 90s. It's so funny. And I think this is such a great story. It is kind of hard to define the genre, because you could almost label this as a black comedy in some ways, even though it's not really all that funny. But to me, it's a story about yearning and about, it's almost a coming of age story for adults, I think, where you reach that point where you're like, am I happy, and do I actually know what will make me happy? When you have those thoughts about, oh, this will make me happy, I'll do this and then I'll be okay. And you do that, and then you realize that, you can look at it even on a smaller level, like buying junk food. You can be like, all right, I'll smash a Big Mac and then I'll be happy for the rest of the day. And then you eat it and you realize it's actually just made you really unhappy. To me, that's kind of what this movie is about. All these characters are just trying to figure out what it is, and even Jackie Earle Haley, he doesn't want a grown woman, and he knows that, and he's not happy about that. And I love the way that the film treats all of its characters with this level of sympathy. Like, none of these people are good people, really. They're all doing bad things.
Yeah.
But but the way the movie treats them as characters, they're all likable in their own way. Even Jackie Earle Haley, there are huge moments where you feel huge amounts of sympathy for him, I think, and then the next scene you're like, oh no, what are you doing?
Yeah, I was actually surprised by how challenging his character was, because I guess my assumption was that he had gotten a nomination for playing a sympathetic pedophile. That was like, I was like, that sounds like that's what would fit with what the Academy rewards. And and you don't really see much of him for at least half the movie. You just hear people talking about him. And when you first meet him, is that awesome scene that takes place at the pool where I think like half the neighborhood is there, and then he kind of sneaks in and goes and starts swimming. And I was, it looks creepy. By the time when he finally gets kicked out, he's like, I was hot and I was trying to just cool off. But the way he goes about it, and the way that it's shot, it's meant to unsettle you because he's floating.
That's right.
Yeah, he dives underwater and he has all the little legs from all the kids, swimming around them. So
he's got goggles on. He knows that they make it clear at the start that his rules of parole are that he's not allowed within certain zones,
right.
Town, anywhere where children are, basically. So he knows he's doing the wrong thing. And yeah, you're right. You're meant to be unsettled. But then when he gets out and he, calls out, I was just trying to cool off. Some small part of you feels bad for him, even though it shouldn't.
Well, I thought that I was misjudging him. Because up until when we finally get, a proper scene with him, voiceover included, and we'll talk about the voiceover because I have things to say. But at one point, it's just entirely clear that he does have a problem, because for a while, what I was thinking is maybe he was convicted, but in a way, that doesn't mean he's a pedophile. I was hoping that it would be, or I was assuming it was one of those things where like, he was peeing in a park and there was a kid around. But no, it turns out that no, he actually, he's attracted to kids. So he really is as dangerous as the community thinks he is.
Yeah.
And so that once that was settled, it was just a lot harder to follow that character, right? And I think that you're right. I mean, there is ultimately, by the time that everything is said and done, I think that the movie shows him more compassion than even Kate Winslet, that is to Kate Winslet or Patrick Wilson, because I guess his story is ultimately maybe the most tragic. But I was, there's this point in the movie where he goes out on a date after his mom has been nagging him to go out on a date. So he goes out on a date with this woman that has plenty of issues of her own, and it looks like it's going well. And then she's finally gotten comfortable with him, and he basically turns on her. She's driving him, and they stop, and then he starts masturbating in front of her, and it was just, as the audience, that was when I kind of just cut off ties with the character. I was like, all right, it's too much. I couldn't really get behind him. From that moment, I was 100% with the community. I was like, okay, this guy's a threat. I mean, I know he's sick, but I really can't look away anymore. He really is.
Yeah.
It's the danger that, this guy, Noah Emmerich, he's kind of a buffoon most of the movie, and you think that he's blowing things out of proportion, and he is, but in the end, he's right about Jackie Earle Haley basically being this threat in the neighborhood. And so I was not expecting that. I really walked away from it more challenged by the Jackie Earle Haley character than I thought. I thought that it was just going to be a clear-cut thing that, he got the Oscar because he probably will get a speech towards the end where he's just raging against the community for demonizing him when he really didn't deserve it. But in the end, he kind of deserved it, as harsh as that may sound.
No, yeah. And it is interesting that he did get nominated for this, given, as you say, there isn't a big speech moment. Like, I'm almost trying, I know that I watched the Oscars that year, but I'm trying to picture what scene they would have played as like his Oscar moment, when they're showing the clips. And I'm like, he really is, as you said in this movie, there's large chunks where you don't even meet him until maybe 40 minutes into the film, really. And his character is not like, even supporting is almost a stretch, because I do think it's more thematically where his character ties in. But yeah, he's not a huge part of the movie, really.
Yeah, if I had known that he had gotten the nomination, I would have thought that the purpose of his character was just to be sort of this threat in the background that kept the community tense. But I wouldn't have expected his story or that plotline to come to anything. At least not until I started seeing him, with his mom, and then you saw that, well, they're actually giving some screen time to this guy, so there has to be a payoff down the line, which there is.
Yeah. So let's talk about the acting then while we're talking about, the Oscars and Jackie Earle Haley. I adore, as it sounds like you do, Kate Winslet. I think she's fantastic and she's great in this film.
Yes.
This is also the film where I really fell in love with Patrick Wilson too. I think he is such an underrated actor, and I think much like his character, I think he kind of gets forgotten about because he is so handsome. I think the Prom King is a pretty perfect nickname for Patrick Wilson because he is fucking beautiful.
And he hasn't aged, really. I
know, it's insane.
Yeah, it's not even that he's aged gracefully. He looks the same now as he did back then, which is crazy. But yeah, I like him a lot too. I don't know. I can't, because I was trying to figure out if my wife wanted to watch the movie with me. And I was like, I haven't watched the trailer. I can't really tell you what it is about, but you can just look it up if you want to. And so she was looking at the cast, and she's like, who's Patrick Wilson? And I was trying to think of movies that I could tell her, that was like, well, he was in Watchmen. She hasn't seen Watchmen. She hasn't seen that Western that he was in. I was talking about it with Alex the other day. But, you can't think of a big mainstream movie that he's in that you can point and be like, and that was when he became a star. But if you watch a handful of movies, if you consider yourself a film buff, you know about Patrick Wilson, and you know that he's really good. Hard Candy. Yeah. My wife has seen Hard Candy.
Oh no. Yeah, he's great in Hard Candy, which was just a couple of years after this from memory, or no, a couple of years before. I think Hard Candy was 2005 actually. Yep. Yeah, and Jennifer Connelly as well. I think it's. I had actually forgotten how large a part of this film her character was, but she's really great in this movie too. Yeah,
she's really good. I don't know. It gets tricky when you're. They're all fantastic actors. To me, the big hurdle, maybe, and it's almost comical because I don't really mind it. But then when I sat back and I was thinking about it, it bothered me a little bit, and that's that. The movie has to sell you on the fact that this guy has the perfect wife, Jennifer Connelly, right? She's beautiful. She's successful. She is, she seems fine. She puts up with him. He's failed the bar twice and doesn't seem to be very interested in succeeding the third time. And she's so patient. She defends him when the in-laws are kind of criticizing him. She seems great. And so I understand that what the movie's trying to tell you is like, he is, he's unfulfilled. And then he finds Kate Winslet, and she is everything that Jennifer Connelly isn't. Right? She's kind of a mess, and that part I buy. But when they try to tell you that, he even describes it, like, oh, Kate Winslet, well, she's not beautiful like Jennifer Connelly is beautiful. She was, she's like a tomboy, and she has thick eyebrows and what. And I was
eyebrows are thicker than he thought necessary.
But I'm like, I don't buy it. She still looks like Kate Winslet, and I'm sorry, man. I mean, she's wearing overalls. That's like the main thing that distinguishes her from Jennifer Connelly. But your big existential moment is choosing between two gorgeous women. So it was a little hard to buy because Kate Winslet is such a great actress. Because everybody's, there's such good actors, and because there is more going on in this relationship than just looks. I can roll with it. But when it was over, I was thinking, if this movie had cast somebody that was not as traditionally attractive as Kate Winslet, if you really cast somebody that was, that didn't look like a movie star, then you would have a much more interesting story because, I think that when it's all over, I'm like, she's going to land on her feet because she's Kate Winslet. But if she was somebody else, that was just, like I said, that didn't look like, well, at the very least, she can get by on her looks the way that Patrick Wilson gets by on his looks. I would have been a little more concerned. But that said, she's fantastic. I mean, they're just so good in all those moments they have together. And then even when they're, when they're apart. I don't think there's like a weak spot in this cast.
Yeah, and I do. It is a tricky issue because while I understand what you're saying, she's so great in the role, and I think like she has this way of exuding personality which is beyond looks. And I think while yes, she's Kate Winslet and she's such an attractive woman, I think just by looking at her facial expressions, you can feel that she's not a confident woman and she doesn't think she's attractive and therefore she isn't. Like, there are those people who they're more attractive because they know they're attractive.
Right.
And there are those people who, while they're pretty, if they don't feel pretty, they don't look it. And I think that she does a pretty good job of carrying that across in this film, I think.
Yeah, I think that the story works. I just think that there's some moments that would hit you more powerfully if it was if somebody that was a little overweight or who had who had a, I don't know. I mean, I can only think of the extremes. I was going to say a unibrow, but it just becomes a comedy.
I know they should have cast Eugene Levy in Kate Winslet's role. I think that's a problem that Hollywood has in general, though. I found the same thing with I don't know if you saw or read The Girl on the Train. But I loved that book and I could not stand the movie. Partially, I think it was just not very well executed. But casting Emily Blunt in that role just did not work for the exact same reason. This woman's meant to be a complete mess, an alcoholic, frumpy older woman. And there you've got beautiful Emily Blunt. It made the whole story not work for me.
Yeah, I think that's a problem that they just... I imagine both actors and actresses have. At some point, they just become movie stars. And then when you see them in a movie, then you no longer think... oh, well, that's a guy that's just like me, or that's just a guy that like that girl, a woman that's just like that girl I just saw, down the street. It's like, oh no, it's a movie star. So they have like an edge, a little advantage over the standard, person. And in this case, even though they're meant to be, well-to-do people that are living kind of like the lives that some of us wish we had, I guess, there's still, I wish there'd been that contrast a little more, but it's, again, the movie works anyway. When it was over, I was thinking about it and I was like, it was still Kate Winslet. Yeah. But how do you feel about where they, because we're talking about, the compassion that they show Jackie Earle Haley towards the end. How do you feel about where their story ends? Because I had to sit back and think, I'm like, I like it, but I'm not sure why. Because I mean, I guess first of all, were you rooting for them to end up together?
That's a really interesting question. I can't say that I was or I wasn't, and I think it's a really interesting film because it kind of ends almost halfway through the story in some ways. You're left kind of, what is the comeuppance for these people? Like what happens to their lives and their relationships now? Do they go back to their partners? Like, I think it's an interesting, and this is where I think thematically the film really works for me, is that, like, there's no question the little children the title is referring to are these two.
The adults.
It's Patrick Wilson and Kate Winslet, who they're acting like little children. They don't know what it is they want. They're trying to, and that's why I said earlier, to me, it feels like a coming of age story for adults where, I don't think this is a story that's told often enough, is that adults don't always have it all together and don't always know what it is they want. So it's not so much that I wanted them to get together. I think I just wanted them to grow up. And to me, that's where I think the film does end perfectly, because they both kind of realize that, they're being silly. They're acting childish. They're making out on a football field after dark like they're, 15 years old. And, I think when he realizes that he's not this skateboarding rock star and she realizes that she was literally putting her child in danger, and that is the moment when they decide to, I guess, move on. Yeah, I do feel quite satisfied by the ending.
Yeah,
you don't?
I have mixed feelings because I'm trying to. I guess I wasn't sure what it was telling me. not in a bad way. I'm as in like, oh, I'm gonna have to think about this for a while, because I don't know that they move on. I guess what I wanted for the characters was, I guess, like you said, to grow up, maybe in a bigger sense. I wanted them to be happy. I stopped investing in their relationship at some point, because it started the movie. I mean, this is intentional. I think the movie at first, it paints the relationship as this really good thing, and then as it goes on and they start lying, especially Patrick Wilson, because they don't really focus too much on Kate Winslet's husband, but Patrick Wilson starts asking really like sneaky and sleazy around his wife, kind of like having this big smile of like, I'm getting away with something, and then it stops feeling like, it started feeling like, oh, this guy's just cheating on his wife, you know?
Yeah.
But I do still want, I mean, this was somebody who we met, and obviously he was not happy with where he was in his life. And same thing about Kate Winslet. And so I wanted them to find a place where they were happy, or don't. But, you know, to me, that was the ultimate question, right? Rather, halfway through the movie, it's like, it's not about whether they're going to end up together or not, but whether they're going to find a way to happiness. And I felt like the movie, the way it ends, it's more like they settle, but in different ways. I think that, yeah, Patrick Wilson kind of, you know, he injures himself skateboarding, and then he's being loaded into the ambulance, and he has like kind of a smile. And to me, that was pretty dorky. That was, you know, he's just an idiot. It's more like, yes, he has that realization, I guess, that he's not a skateboarder, and I guess he's not the kind of man that would just leave his family. And but does that mean that he's going to be happy when he gets out of the hospital and he goes back to regular life? I don't know. I didn't see an indication of that. And it's not that I need to, but on that end, it just felt like, all right, well, he's just going back to the same. And in Kate Winslet's case, it felt even worse, because she was even more all in on this escape. I felt like she was kind of trying to be the voice of reason, and then Patrick Wilson convinced her to run away together, and then he stood her up, basically. And if not for the encounter with Jackie Earle Haley towards the end, you know, I don't know how long she would have been in that park. But to me, it was really sad to see her basically resign herself to just go back to this marriage that doesn't make her happy, to this house that she doesn't feel like it's her own. I mean, I'm glad that she came to her senses, because through that last sequence, I was thinking, man, you can't just take your child, you know? Patrick Wilson was at least leaving his kid behind, but she can just like take her kid. I mean, that was, the cops were going to be on them.
Kidnapping.
But it was just sad. To me, it was not like, oh, they moved on. To me, it just felt like, all right, well, they tried to escape, and it didn't work out for several reasons. So I guess to me, it reads like a little more of a downer of an ending. I don't think Kate Winslet is, you know, she doesn't win in the end. She goes back to what she hated, and Patrick Wilson, I think he's trying to fool himself into thinking that he's going to be happy, but I don't know how long that would last. But it just felt like a bummer, especially when contrasted with the other thing that's happening while we see all this, which is Noah Emmerich, who's been the biggest asshole through the entire movie, actually getting a shot at redeeming himself by saving the life of Jackie Earle Haley. Now that is, you know, triumphant when compared to the other two things. You know, you end the movie there, and I think, all right, well, Noah Emmerich is going to be kind of a new man and has a new life, a new lease on life after the events of this movie. You know, he found a way to turn that corner. So it was fascinating. I mean, it was all this going on, and it's the kind of movie that basically, you know, you're meant to think about after.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love talking about movies like this where, you know, we can have these differing opinions, because to me, I think what really ties this movie together, and I brought up before, is the themes and stuff. I think it's all that question of, is happiness something that you can actually manifest for yourself? You know, like little kids just do whatever they want. Like, I've got kids, and there's no stopping them from doing something. If they want to climb a tree, they'll just do it. And if they fall down and hurt themselves, then whatever, they'll cry for a minute and then they'll climb it again, because they've forgotten that instantly. And as adults, we lose those instincts, I think. And, you know, we we do kind of settle, I think, quite a bit. And I think, to me, that's really what the end of the film is about, is it possible to manifest happiness by doing something, or are you just being silly by doing that? And, you might think you know what makes you happy. Like the whole movie, Emmerich's character, he thinks what makes him happy is bringing this guy down and being a bully and trying to redeem himself that way. But what he really wants is to help people. Even this guy who, as you say, there's nothing, by the end of the film, you definitely don't feel like there's redemption for Jackie Earle Haley, and he knows that, which is why he does what he does. But even in that moment, what Noah Emmerich really wants is to just help this guy. And I think that's, that's the same for Kate Winslet and Patrick Wilson's character is what do they really want, and how do they achieve that? Like, okay, what they want is happiness, like you said. Do they achieve that by running away together, or is there something they can, without actually hurting people? And yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there, but I mean, maybe that's just me reading into it.
No, I think that it's, I know that this is it, but a fundamental difference between the two of us is that you have kids and I don't. And I think that there is, I imagine that once you have kids, it's like you make enough compromises, I think, when you marry someone. The moment that you decide that you're going to spend the rest of your life with somebody, then that means that the days of, I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, those are over.
Yeah.
And then I can imagine that increases exponentially when you have kids because, now it's even less so. You have to think of not just your wife, but your kids. And but that is generally, hopefully, a sacrifice, a compromise that you make happily because of what you get in return. So
absolutely, yeah.
But what happens when that's not working out, right? Which is what's happening with these people. And so, but I think that maybe you're able to maybe enjoy their small wins, or maybe they're just, if you take the fact that they did not go and do something absolutely crazy that was not going to fix their lives, you can take that as a win. And I guess I wanted more. I wanted to at least fix their lives. And as you were talking, I was thinking, and you know what? A problem is that the way that their partners are presented, because like I said, Jennifer Connelly is presented as a very sensible, very patient. She's great. Whereas Kate Winslet's husband, the most we know about him, he seems kind of a dick. And then he has the big scene where she catches him masturbating, to a porn site. He had ordered the porn star's panties, and it's not. He's not presented in a flattering light. And but I was thinking the perfect ending would have been for Kate Winslet to end up with somebody that's like Jennifer Connelly. If Kate Winslet was leaving a partner, a spouse that was like Jennifer Connelly, then I would have been like, you need to go back. You need to figure out your shit and just, make this work. But when the way that her husband is presented, I don't have any, faith in this marriage. So to me, it was always better for her to leave. Whereas with Patrick Wilson, the way that he was treating Jennifer Connelly, I was like, it's better if he doesn't come back because it's better for her in the long run.
Yeah, it's interesting the way we read those. And I must say, I agree with you. This movie actually did hit me differently watching it this time now that I have kids. I think the last time I saw it was before I had kids, and it definitely does hit differently. But I don't think necessarily that Kate Winslet will go back to her husband. I think the movie makes it pretty clear to me that that's done. I think it's more just that she's decided she's doing it the wrong way. Just rushing into another relationship like this without thinking about it and, taking her kid isn't the right way to do it. And I think that, if you flash forward, she probably will leave her husband. And as for Patrick Wilson, who knows if they'll work it out or not. It's funny. I think there are also scenes where you are supposed to feel empathetic towards Patrick Wilson in that relationship too. I think, when he's going through the bill that she's left for him, and she's like, do you really need these subscriptions? And he's like, I guess not. It's funny. There are so many different ways you can read that depending on who you are. And I think the movie knows that. And that's why I think it takes this really great approach with its characters where everybody is grey. There's no heroes or villains in this film really. I think everyone is just these huge shades of grey, which I think is, it's what the film is telling us about suburbia.
That sounds like a good transition to voiceover, because I think the voiceover
That's exactly what I was going to bring up. Yeah. So I got the vibe earlier that you weren't a fan of the voiceover.
Oh, no. I am a big fan.
Oh, good. Oh, cool. All right. Because there's two schools of thought. And I know that you're a writer. There are lots of writers who are like, voiceover is lazy. I adore the voiceover in this film.
Yeah, I like voiceover in general. I mean, even from the first voiceover bit that we got here, I perked up. I was like, oh, it's that kind of movie. And I liked it. But even beforehand, I don't have a problem with voiceover. I know that yes, I guess general wisdom is voiceover sucks. If you use voiceover, you probably don't need to, and you use voiceover, it better not be telling you something that you can just express visually or something that's already happening or whatever. And I think that's something that gets taught and it gets repeated so much because yes, bad voiceover is terrible, but that doesn't mean that you can't use it. That doesn't mean that it's a tool that should never be used. It's just that I think you need to know why you're using it. And like any rule, it can be broken, it can be bent if it suits your story. And in this case, I mean, you could make the argument, I think, that you could remove the voiceover and you have such good actors that would still get the overall feeling that the voiceover is going for, right? I mean, I don't need the voiceover to tell me specifically what's going through Kate Winslet's head as she's watching her friends, or friends in quotation marks, talk about, their lives, or as she watches Patrick Wilson, walk by with the stroller. But she's a really good actress. Everybody here is a really good actor. So their facial expressions, their body language, that's enough. But the voiceover does add something. For one, it's like there's something to just hearing it verbalized. If it's well written, it's a plus. Second, I just love the tone of it. I think this really deep male voice. It sounds like you're watching a documentary, and suddenly it just, at least in my case, it just put a distance between me and the characters. That kind of told me you're not really meant to relate to them, which ends up being, what happened in the movie. These are like subjects of study, and we're going to tell you what the, adult female does and what the adult male does. And it was just fascinating. I don't think they overdo it, but when they deploy the voiceover, it's very effective. And it's just very telling because, you get it for Kate Winslet, you get it for, Patrick Wilson, and then halfway through the movie, you get it for Earle Haley. And that's telling you something. That's telling you, okay, well, you need to, this character is more than you thought. Because back then when the movie came out, we didn't know. I guess he was a child actor, but this was his big return. So now, I watch him, I was like, oh, it's Earle Haley, so I expect that his character is going to have some weight. But back then, you didn't know. So I think that it was very smart to just have that moment of like, okay, just so you know, the pedophile, he is a main character. We're going to follow him, so we're going to give you a little bit of voiceover to just get you ready. I really, really like it. I don't know, what's your experience with it?
Yeah, no, so I love it. I think firstly, the way it's written and the way it's presented is very literary. It's, there's something just really nice about the prose, I think. And like you say, it's kind of documentary-like, but it's also, in a strange way, kind of fairy tale-like. There's a little bit about it that's almost a little, Once Upon a Time, which I think is perfect for this story because it is almost like a suburban fairy tale in a way, like the prince meets the princess, but, of course things don't go right because that's not what this movie is. But there's something about it that just puts you in that headspace where you feel like you're being told a story. And I agree with you that the best thing about it is that it takes you out of the headspace of this is the main character, or every character is presented very equally because they're presented from this kind of third party's point of view, which is why I think there are moments where you can feel sympathy and disgust with all the characters, even secondary ones, because it doesn't, like when you see bits of Kathy, Patrick Wilson's wife, you're not seeing it from his point of view necessarily. You're seeing everything from this third party, which I think really, really works for the film. So I'm glad that you like the voiceover as well.
Yeah, I can see how the argument could be made that it's not necessary, but I think that just because you can tell a story without it doesn't mean that it doesn't play a part. Like I said, I think it establishes a very specific tone that wouldn't be there if you didn't have the voiceover. So I really like it. I just thought of a character that is not sympathetic at all, and that is that the blonde woman that's part of her, little group of moms that go out to the park.
That's interesting. Even her, I find, like, I don't think of her as a villain in the story. And again, maybe it's because I've got kids now, and you do see all kinds of people
like
at the park, and
they'll turn you into that.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily like everybody that you meet, and it's funny when you have kids, you do that. There comes a point where you kind of stop making friends, and your kids make friends, and so you're kind of forced to hang out with their parents. Like my eldest is now in kindy, so she's at school, so she started to make her own friends. And, we go and we have to, talk to the parents and stuff. And, sometimes you click with them and you might form your own friendship. And sometimes it's like, okay, yep, we are clearly just here because our kids are here. And that's what this is. And that's okay. You're you and I'm me. And that's kind of how I feel about that character. She's not a bad person. She's not the kind of person that, she's clearly not the kind of person that Kate Winslet would be friends with, but that's fine because there'll be some people watching this movie who wouldn't want to be friends with Kate Winslet. So,
yeah, but I think she goes out of her way to make Kate Winslet feel bad, which is, I guess, where I draw the line. Especially once you get to the book club sequence.
Yeah,
she's just so mean-spirited with everything she says.
Yeah.
Because, it's not about the book. In the end, it's about the fact that she knows that Kate Winslet and Patrick Wilson kissed. And that's really the subtext to everything she says. So that's, to me, that was crossing a line. Yeah. But, I do not go to parks to interact with other parents. So.
Yeah. I just think the filmmaking is lovely in this film. It's insane to me to think that this movie was, 14 years ago, and Todd Field, after the 1-2 punch of In the Bedroom and then this, which are both so exceptional, hasn't made anything since, because, that's a strong start for a director, I think.
Yeah. I looked on IMDb, and he has, 4 movies that are just, I guess, in progress, in production or pre-production or whatever. So hopefully something pans out. I know there's some directors that are just, either projects fall through or they're just very picky with what they decide to make, I guess,
Yeah.
I'm glad that he has things in the works, because that means that at least he's still making a living out of, directing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of crazy. When I saw that was the last thing he directed, it was a little shocking. Especially, once I realized that he wasn't Todd Haynes, I was like, all right, well, that's crazy. He's really good. I don't remember much visually about In the Bedroom. I haven't seen it since it came out. But this looked so good. And that sequence at the pool when the Jackie Earle Haley sequence, the way that he shoots it, it was just kind of it feels weird to say breathtaking about a sequence that basically involves a pedophile jumping into a public pool and, swimming among kids and whatever. But it was, there's so many things going on in that sequence. So he gives it the scope, I think, that was necessary, that up till that point in the movie was not there. Up till then, everything's looked great. Everything looks very pretty, because it's meant to. But here you have this sort of, that thing that's being bubbling underneath. It finally comes to light, and here's this guy, this threat, and he's swimming in the pool, and everybody's freaking out. And I did have a little bit of a Jaws feeling when everybody's just rushing out of the pool, and you have the big overhead shots of the people just scrambling out, and then it's just him in the pool while everybody else is surrounding the pool. It was just great. And I think the rest of the movie is great, but to me, that was the high point.
Yeah. So, how are you scoring it?
So I do 4 out of 5. You guys do out of 10, right? So out of 10,
yeah.
I would say 8 out of 10 with the potential to move up to 9 once I rewatch it and, just connect with it a little more. Sometimes you get just like a very clear cut thing, but like I said, this movie is one of those that wants you to think about it, wants you to like let it marinate. But still, 8 out of 10. I mean, it's really good. I would recommend it to anyone.
Good score. Nice. Yeah, I'm a 9 out of 10. It's very high in my list of favorite films. I just think it has so much to say, and like you say, it's one of those movies that you really can just let marinate and think about, which I just adore. And I love stories, and for some reason, especially ones that don't have happy endings. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I grew up listening to The Cure so heavily, but like to me, this is my jam. So yeah, I love it. I would highly recommend reading the book if you're a reader at all. Tom Perrotta is a great author. So yeah, definitely. Which actually, I won't spoil it for you, but I will say that the book ends quite differently.
Oh.
Which I won't say whose storylines end differently, but read it and then come back to me.
I think did he write this one before or after election?
After election, yeah. Okay. So this was 2004, I think he wrote the book from memory. So like 2 years before this came out.
Okay, I should read them in order. I think I'm gonna do Election, Little Children, and then The Leftovers.
Yeah. Election's interesting. Election reads much more like a young adult book. I was surprised when I picked it up. It's very thin and it's very, in its prose, it's a lot less mature, but I guess that's obviously what he was going for with the style and stuff. But yeah, all great books, all great movies. Yep.
I mean, I don't know when I'll get to read something. I mean, I know our mutual friend Sam, that's next on my reading list.
Yep.
And after that, I might just have to put Perrotta there, you know?
Yeah.
Tough act to follow, Tom Perrotta, following Sam Hurley, but, you know.
Well, yeah, of course. Nothing's going to beat Sam. Thank you so much for joining me today, Julio. I really appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can find your excellent, excellent show.
Well, we are The Contrarians. You can look us up on your podcatcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever. The Contrarians, our website is wearethecontrarians.com. Just check us out there. The conversation like I just had with Billy, that comes on the second half of the episodes. First half of the episode, I don't know if we ever would have been able to do Little Children because, some of the subject matter, I don't know, you can make jokes about pedophilia that work. So we probably wouldn't have done it. I don't even know what the Rotten Tomatoes score is on this one, but basically we'll argue about the Rotten Tomatoes score of a movie. If it's fresh, we talk about it like it's rotten. If it's rotten, we talk about it like it's fresh. And then second half, then we dig deep and we tell you how we really feel. I will definitely recommend Alex watch it, though. We were just talking about how awesome Patrick Wilson is in general, so I think he'll be happy to know that there's another movie that he can check out with him.
You guys have a great show. I listen to it every week. My listening has dropped off on a lot of shows with COVID because I'm not commuting, but I always make an effort to keep up on your guys because it's so fun and such a fresh idea. The first half is always so funny. And then I love just your real talk, obviously, like what we just did, where you just give your real thoughts. So, because you guys are both so smart and funny, I highly recommend it. So
that makes me happy.
Thank you very much for joining me. All right. In the meantime, next week, I will not have Topher with me still. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us, you can do that at wewatchedathing.com or wewatchedathing@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all under the handle @wewatchedathing. If you want to help support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/wewatchedathing, and I'll catch you next week.